This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, the latest on the shutdown of Canadian rail service after employees are locked out.
Struggling to stay open, nearly half of Nova Scotia restaurants say they are losing money or just breaking even.
And ready, set, serve. A big beach volleyball competition gets underway in Halifax.
The humidity was low and day was pretty quiet, but we do have some weather heading in our direction in and out of the forecast. I'll let you know what to expect and when coming up.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news out of Ottawa now. The federal government has ordered the country's two major freight railroads to enter binding arbitration.
Canadian National Rail and Canadian Pacific Kansas City locked out more than 9,000 workers at midnight after negotiations broke off. Together, the two rail companies moved more than $1 billion worth of goods per day across Canada. Union members took to the picket lines this morning. It's the first time ever that freight traffic on the two largest rail networks came to a halt simultaneously.
Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon said he is ordering to extend the duration of the current collective agreements until a new agreement is signed, and that he's ordering the resumption of activities. But he says there has to be consultation and the parties have to decide. He is hoping the process won't take longer than 2 days. We'll have more on this story a bit later in the show.
Nova Scotia's restaurant industry is struggling more than ever. An increase in everything from food prices to operating expenses is putting nearly half of restaurants into the red. Angela McIver reports.
On the streets of Halifax, it's not hard to find people who avoid going to restaurants.
Just don't get me wrong, I love going out, but it's just these are different times.
When me and my friends are planning where to go, we're looking at spots, we're oh, it's a bit too expensive, and we're all trying to find something that works with all of our budgets. So I would say more so than it did maybe a year ago, yeah.
Local restaurants are feeling the impact. At Le Bistro, the cost of food has meant higher menu prices. A last resort, owner Liz Ingram Chambers says she has tried to avoid.
I mean, food costs have gone through the roof, like our oils and butters and dairy and beef and chicken. Everything skyrocketed.
Ingram Chambers says her restaurant is usually full, but every time an employee has to stay late or a glass breaks, she gets stressed.
Because you get nervous and then you get cranky because you're watching your money fly out the window.
According to the Restaurant Association of Nova Scotia, nearly half of the province's dining establishments are operating at a loss or just breaking even. It blames not only food prices, but also the cost of utilities, insurance, and equipment, a clear sign the industry still hasn't recovered since the pandemic.
At the Orient Chinese Cuisine in Bedford, owner Ivan Chan dropped lunch service to offset the costs. He says in his 9 years of business, this is by far the worst.
No, we are not making money, and it's kind of hard to even imagine anyone else right now, just the way it is. But I really think it's a big picture as a whole. It's not as an individual who is doing well or not. It's just the whole economy and everything with the inflation is just make it so much more difficult.
Both restaurant owners have hoped the industry they love will turn around, but after 4 years of trying to stay optimistic following the 2020 lockdowns, they say it gets harder as the cost of everything continues to rise. Angela McIver, CBC News, Halifax.
Tina with us now to talk weather and a bit of a break from the humidity today.
I know, quite a nice day.
Absolutely. Humidity was down. The sun was out for the most part. It was a beautiful day for most, although, there was a couple of exceptions with the fog in some areas, especially along the South Shore, that stayed fairly stubborn, and that kept the temperatures back into the upper teens for daytime highs. Most of the active weather today was confined to New Brunswick, and that's what's going on right now with the heat of the day. Some scattered showers and thunderstorms are rumbling across western New Brunswick, and they're all pushing off towards the north and to the east. They're rotating around an area of low pressure that's very slow to move. It came out of New Brunswick, and it's pushing its way off towards the east slowly but surely, and over the course of the next 48 hours, that low will be in Labrador, and it will affect Nova Scotia in the form of some cloud cover and give a slight chance for some scattered showers, perhaps inland tomorrow afternoon. In the meantime, our temperature's looking pretty good even right now. 24 in Sydney, 22 in Tracadie, and the humidity is lower as well. So when the temperatures drop in the overnight lows, you actually feel the coolness. 22 in Parsborough, we have 22 in Greenwood, but the cooler temperatures all along the South Shore where those winds, those southwesterly winds blow directly on shore. Not only has it kept the temperatures a little bit cooler along the areas of the coast, but also some fog patches were a little bit stubborn into the afternoon. It should be fairly quiet tonight. The fog will return, but a weak area of low pressure could bring some scattered showers back to the forecast. I'll talk about when that all occurs, the timing, and who's in and who's out.
Stay tuned for that. All right. Thanks, Tina.
Thank you, Tina.
A representative for lobster fishermen on the province's South Shore says people are not happy with comments made by the federal fisheries minister earlier this week. Minister Diane Leboutillier was asked about what her department plans to do about unlicensed fishing in southwest Nova Scotia and the fact that some federal fisheries officers are refusing to do some enforcement work due to fears for their safety. The minister said that they are continuing to work on this. But Dan Fleck of the Brazil Rock Lobster Association says his members want the minister to do more.
The fishermen that we represent here in LFAs 33 and 34 and a lot of people in the communities, they are quite upset. There's illegal fishing occurring and there is no enforcement staff on the road or on the water or on the wharfs. And it's out of hand. It's proliferating, and we're really not happy with the minister's comments.
Fleck says fishermen are seeing, in his words, zero enforcement, and he worries fishermen may start to take matters into their own hands. In a statement from the department this afternoon, a spokesperson said they do not disclose the number of active fishery officers or specifics around their enforcement activities.
Cape Breton's first pallet shelter village is almost ready for residents. The 35 new pallet shelters have arrived in Sydney, and while there were many struggles to find the right place, those behind the project say tenants are looking forward to finally having some privacy. Erin Potty reports.
After months of delays and weeks of site preparation, the pallet village is finally going up at Pine Tree Park on the outskirts of Whitney Pier. The village will be run by the Ally Centre of Cape Breton and New Dawn Enterprises.
Now that they've assembled, I think they're up to about 4 or 5, things start to move more quickly, which was what we expected. And so they'll set up the units and then the electricians will follow behind them, connect the heat pumps and the electrical panels, and we'll be ready to open mid-September.
People experiencing homelessness often stay at Sydney's homeless shelter. But because the need is so high, cots have also been set up at the Ally Centre's drop-in space.
This pallet village is some relief to them. Just a little breather in their lives, really.
Rules of the new pallet village include no smoking inside and no guests. Village staff will also work with tenants to find long-term housing.
We'd like to review people in 3 months' time and kind of keep on them and help them to find some more permanent residents. But there is no steadfast, you got to be out in 3 months type of thing, because we're very aware that, there is a housing crisis and limited vacancies out there, especially for this population.
The 35 people in the village will be housed inside the 70-foot square units. A building on site at Pine Tree Park that once served as a trade school is also being renovated. It will offer communal washrooms, a kitchen, laundry facilities, and rooms where residents can meet with healthcare professionals.
People are excited to have their own space and have ownership of something that they can close the door and be private. People experience their worst days in public, and for the first time for some people in a very long time, they will have 4 walls and a door to have not be watched by the public. It's very unbelievable for many people.
The province has created a $1.7 million annual operating budget for the shelter village. The 5-year agreement may be renewed based on community need. Project partners say although demand for this type of housing is high, there are no plans to grow the pallet village. Instead, they're focused on other supportive housing projects, including a 25-unit rapid housing development in Sydney known as Eleanor's Court. Erin Potty, CBC News, Sydney.
Libraries have a lot to offer: a quiet place to read, community programming, and a place to take refuge. But data obtained by CBC News shows they're increasingly becoming violent places. Staff say they're dealing with threats, assaults, and suspected drug overdoses. Anya Zolodowski has the story.
A man waves a knife. Police move in. Video captured in a Toronto public library. Hostile incidents are happening in Canada's libraries more often than you might think. Surprising, perhaps, for some, but par for the course for many.
I've seen books thrown at staff. I've had to call the police for people bringing knives, fighting among each other.
The librarian spoke to us confidentially, worried about repercussions if she speaks out. She's had to respond to aggressive behavior, suspected overdoses, and threats.
Just profound anger, and we're there, and it's directed at us.
And these incidents are on the rise. CBC News obtained data from a number of public library systems across the country. Between 2022 and 2023, Winnipeg saw a 21% increase in the number of incidents. Vancouver, a 14% increase. And Toronto, a 71% increase. Over 2,300 incidents total, or about 45 incidents per week across Toronto libraries last year. The number of suspected overdoses in Toronto's public libraries up a staggering 529%.
I've had to call 911 before for someone I couldn't wake up.
The growing crisis isn't just in urban centers, but in small towns too. In Amherst, Nova Scotia,
we've probably called the police more in the last 2 years than we have in the previous 5.
U of T professor Siobhan Stevenson has researched this trend. She says it's a sign of the times, and that libraries are often the only free place for the most vulnerable people in our communities to go.
This is not a library problem. This is a political problem. This is a social problem.
She says governments need to spend more money on shelters, affordable housing, and food banks like this one, instead of cutting that funding.
People in the trenches and running these places are busy enough. It's time that people at other levels of public service started talking about it.
We're passionate about it. We want to protect people. And then there's a lot of stuff that we didn't expect to be in our scope. You want to help people, and they're setting us up to fail.
We reached out to the City of Toronto. It funds Toronto's libraries just like this one. In a statement, a spokesperson said that they're committed to finding ways to address the problem. They did not say whether there are plans to increase funding to local social services. Anya Zolodowski, CBC News, Toronto.
Wool producers in the Maritimes are finding a new use for wool that usually goes to waste. They're turning the wool into pellets that can be used to help farmers and gardeners alike. The wool is shredded and then compacted into small pellets that can be sprinkled on the surface of pots and gardens or tilled into the soil. Wool pellets are used as a fertilizer and also help keep moisture in the soil. Taproot Farm plans to operate a wool pellet mill starting this summer. The mill manager says a surprising amount of wool ends up being thrown away.
So even for fleeces that are perfect and beautiful and we can do stuff with, there is still waste wool, whether it's belly wool or leg wool, or they're just bits that are felted. And then what do we do with that? So people have used it for mulching their gardens, but then I kind of fell into this avenue of the pelleting option, and that there were people who were trying to pellet it and see what that could do for a fertilizer.
Gennaro says the hope is to provide a new revenue source for wool producers who will now be able to sell their waste wool so it can be turned into pellets.
Well, it is certainly a picture-perfect night for an international beach volleyball tournament being held in Halifax.
After touring through Europe and North America, 32 men's and women's teams are now hitting the sand courts on the waterfront. The CBC's Paul Palmer reports.
Conditions could not have been any better today for day 2 of the Futures Volleyball World Beach Pro Tour. 2 courts have been set up at the base of Salter Street, and it took a lot of work and effort to get the sand in place.
There's 1.3 million pounds of sand here on the asphalt at Salter Street parking lot. From that, we've built 2 temporary beach volleyball courts, one with grandstand seating. So we've created a purpose-built temporary beach volleyball venue.
The sand came from a quarry in the Annapolis Valley and was trucked in last week. When the competition is done, the sand will then be cleaned up and used at local beach volleyball courts. The teams come from all over the world. A team from Israel had to withdraw, but 10 countries have teams playing in the event.
I have been traveling to the south of Europe, been to Africa playing tournaments, but to be in Halifax is like being in Norway. It's beautiful nature, it's trees, and I live close to the ocean, so I feel a bit like home when I'm here.
It's really great. It's great to have another event at home. We don't have the chance to play international events in Canada that often, so it's really great to, even if it's far from our home, we still feel at home, so it's good.
One of the members of Canada's women's silver medal winning beach volleyball team at the Olympics played in the Halifax tournament several years ago. Many of the players now in Halifax are hoping they can reach that level of play. One of the members of this Canadian team actually played a role with the Canadian Olympic teams.
I got an opportunity to go to Paris and work with all three of the teams there as a training partner. I got to see what life is behind the scenes and help out and learn a ton from all of those super high elite level athletes, and we were with Brandy and Mel when they won the silver, which was super exciting.
One of the many volunteers at the event just recently came home from Ontario as a national beach volleyball champion. Natalia Cassis and her partner Julia McDougall beat a previously unbeaten Ontario team in the gold medal game. Both of them are now soaking in the Halifax tournament and trying to learn as much as they can.
Yeah, definitely. These people are the best in the country. Probably have also won their nationals. So I just get to learn new things.
The tournament will go forward, rain or shine, but it looks like the weather window for the next few days is perfect, right up until the gold medal matches on Sunday. Paul Pometer, CBC News, Halifax.
Don't have a big enough beach in downtown Halifax? Don't worry.
Just
we'll
make
build
one.
one for you.
That's great.
We're going to take a quick break now. Stay with us.
Yes, we have a lot more to come on CBC Nova Scotia News. Talks aimed at a ceasefire in Gaza and getting a hostage exchange deal with Hamas resume in Cairo.
And on the final day of the Democratic National Convention, Kamala Harris will take the stage to accept the presidential nomination.
And look at that beautiful pop of color, the sunflower in bloom. Tina's up next with the full weather forecast. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
So people come here from all over the world to play beach volleyball on the Halifax waterfront, and boy, does the weather cooperate for them today.
I know. Tina, you should give yourself a pat on the back for that one.
Okay, I'll tell you. They might actually find it a little bit cool, especially.
Yeah, but if you're working out, though, right?
I suppose. I know.
It wasn't rainy. It wasn't,
That's true.
It could have been much worse.
Yeah.
Look at me, half empty glass, right? Might have been a little bit cool for them. But yeah, the humidity really went down, especially when you compare it to the beginning of the week when it was just oppressive. So when you talk about the dew point temperatures, that's really the best way to measure the humidity because it changes during the day. In the morning, it's always higher, and then the afternoon, when the temperature spreads away from the dew point, the humidity goes down. But the dew point is always a good way to measure how much moisture is in the atmosphere. So whenever you see those dew point temperatures in the upper teens to lower 20s, we call it oppressive because it gets really hot. You can't sweat. But when it's down into the teens, the lower teens, like 12 to 14, which we have right now, we call that pleasant.
Comfortable.
Yes, there you go. And that's what we have. So it's very comfortable beach volleyball weather. And I think it's going to be much the same for tomorrow. Although we do have some chances for some scattered showers in and out of the forecast, but it's not for everyone. Right now, our temperatures are sitting into the lower 20s for most of us. However, there are some temperatures that are in the teens. And those temperatures that are in the teens are courtesy of because of the cloud cover that is out there, as well as some fog patches that are in and out of our skies. So the fog in some areas has been fairly stubborn, and that's especially true along the south shore of Nova Scotia, where the fog really didn't let up in some areas. And I think because we have got those southwesterly winds, those fog patches are going to stick around on and off over the course of the next couple of days. So it stayed pretty quiet today, although there have been some clouds, and certainly, of course, the low-level clouds like the fog. But most of the action happened this afternoon across New Brunswick, and it is still going. We've got a weak area of low pressure. It's a surface area of low pressure that's slowly moving out of Quebec and into New Brunswick. And some of the cloud cover from these scattered showers and even some thunderstorms will find their way into the Nova Scotia skies, in particular across parts of northern Nova Scotia, but it will be periodically. And most of the temperatures will be really wild into the overnight, mild that is, into the overnight hours with temperatures dropping down into the teens. So here we go. We've got that area of low pressure that was overhead yesterday that kicked off those scattered showers for some. It continues to move off towards the north into the east, and then that weak surface area of low pressure over New Brunswick that's kicking off those scattered showers right now. A ridge of high pressure is going to try to sneak in by tomorrow, and it should clear the Nova Scotia skies until tomorrow afternoon. And that's when some of the effects from that area of low pressure will affect Nova Scotia in the form of some scattered showers that will form in the afternoon, maybe an isolated thunderstorm. But watch what happens as the sun sets and we go into Saturday night and Saturday morning. Things settle out once again. However, we've got a bit of a northerly flow, so that's going to affect primarily Cape Breton in the form of cloud cover, as well as those scattered showers will stay in and out of the forecast. But the rest of the mainland will be, fairly quiet and fairly clear. Saturday afternoon, once again, we have those chances for scattered showers, but that's primarily across most of Cape Breton. So temperature-wise in Cape Breton tomorrow, like today, temperatures in the 20s, although we're going to see more in the way of cloud cover over Cape Breton than what we did today. And there are better chances for showers in the afternoon and then again tomorrow night into Saturday morning. For the rest of the mainland, look at the temperatures tomorrow afternoon, warming up into the lower 20s. I think this looks a little bit worse than what it actually is, especially across northern Nova Scotia. There just are chances for scattered showers and just that, especially into the afternoon. Tomorrow morning, some fog patches and mix of sun and clouds for the better part of the day. And then with the heat of the daytime heating, it looks like those scattered showers could form once again in the afternoon. And the same is true through the Annapolis Valley. Temperatures are going to be a little bit warmer inland, and where those winds blow directly on shore out of the south to southwest, the temperatures will be cooler into the upper teens to lower 20s. So this forecast looks a little bit showery, but it's not. It's not for everyone, that's for sure. Tomorrow's daytime high should be around 24 degrees. Scattered showers will develop inland with the southwesterly wind. Can't rule out a shower on Saturday. Sunday looks pretty quiet until late in the day. Saturday evening into Monday, the clouds will be back. We may carry a chance for showers Sunday night into Monday, but all in all, it looks like a pretty nice weekend with the temperatures warming back up into the mid to lower 20s with the southwesterly winds. So I think a pretty good forecast, something for everyone.
Yeah,
summer's still hanging on, right?
Pretty good. All right, thanks so much, Tina.
Thanks, Tina. Well, a popular whale watching company based in St. Andrews, New Brunswick, got an up-close view of one of their favorite humpback whales.
They call him Cork. Senior naturalist Danielle Dion says she's been watching this particular whale for the past 20 years.
She's right under the water. She came right towards us and underneath our stern and came up on the other side. So close approaches like that are always incredibly special, for sure. No reason why she wouldn't go under us. Is it Cork? Yeah. Hi, baby girl.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh, you're so big.
Oh, you must even the tail.
It's not common. Whales are here in the Bay of Fundy to feed, and that's really what's on their mind most of the time. Saying that, there's certain individuals that can be more curious than others, and there's definitely some in Fundy. They all have different personalities. Yeah. If a whale surfaces close to you and especially if they're approaching the boat, the best thing you can do is stay where you are. And whether your engines are on or off, but as long as your boat, your propellers aren't turning and you're not moving, the best thing to do is to let them move on until they're a safe distance away, and then we can move to that 100-meter distance. Whether she was curious or on her way in that direction, she's a really special whale to me. I've been watching her for the past 20 years, and I got very emotional when she came quite close like that. So I'd like to say she was a little curious and came over. She definitely turned and came right at us and went under our stern. So it was a very special experience.
Welcome back. A beloved maritime company is finding a way to produce its potato chips after its factory was destroyed by fire. The Covered Bridge potato chip factory near Heartland, New Brunswick, burned down in March.
But 5.5 months later, the company continues to operate. The CBC's Jean Armstrong gets a tour of the new makeshift factory in Woodstock.
This is our the bulk bags, and those are 18 pounds of chips in every bag, and they're dumping them into these little hoppers that'll feed through into the tumbler and apply the seasoning.
So that's 18 pounds of chips?
Yep, every bag is 18 pounds in there. So on this line right now, they are running dill.
Dill?
Yeah, so there's vinegar in the dill, so that's probably why you can smell it.
I smell the dill.
Yeah.
Our top story this hour, firefighters across New Brunswick rushed to a massive factory fire overnight. The blaze at the Covered Bridge potato chip factory began yesterday evening.
What have the past 5.5 months been like for you since that devastating fire?
It has definitely been a roller coaster, up and down. Sit there and watch, the factory that you spend 18 years of your life burning to the ground. That was really tough. That was a really hard one to watch. But, as an entrepreneur, you always go through a lot of that anyway. So I think it's just another challenging time for us. But look, we've got a plan in motion, and we're executing that plan, and we're getting there.
You brought your potatoes to other companies that produce potato chips and train them on how to make Covered Bridge potato chips. And then they bring them back here and you season them and bag them.
Yes, exactly. We've been selling potatoes to other potato chip companies for 21 years, and we still do today, about 600 truckloads a year. So luckily enough, I had some friends in the industry that any little extra capacity they have, they would give it to. So maybe one week we get 50,000 pounds of bulk chips from somebody. Maybe the next week we don't get any, or maybe it's not for 3 weeks. So it's hit or miss. So it's hard to try and balance out your inventories when you're not sure week to week what exactly you'll get. But it's all our Canadian raw materials. So it's all our oil, our boxes, everything that we have, our season, anything.
I'm just picturing this master top secret recipe, in a box that you hand over to one of these potato chip companies, in velvet gloves. And they have to, keep this a trade secret because these chips, are beloved, right?
Yeah.
People love these chips. So is that what happened? Like, did you have to give them a recipe or instructions?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we train them on the whole thing, which isn't ideal, but, and it is what it is. I mean, it's either you do or you don't have any product. So you just have to bite it and do it.
What went into making sure that chip wasn't, their chip, but it was your chip?
Well, it's a good question. Not even just train them on how to do the russet because they're different and complex themselves, and get the right color, the right finish moisture, the right bite, the right hardness, because ours was not too excessive of hard to bite, but not too light. It was right in the middle. So it's getting them to learn. Like sometimes you get shipments like, no, you got to do this different with your fryer because the bite was a little too hard. So our quality control manager's been on that, but it's hard because there is like 6 places we have to work with.
Where the factory used to stand near Heartland is a little pop-up shop that you have. Why was that important to get going?
Every year, we get 40 to 50,000 tourists that come through our factory to see how we make the chips, learn about how we grow potatoes, sample fresh chips that we'd have 40 seasonings for them to test. We had a really big loyal following, 350 buses would come, and that was a big part of our brand and how we started, and I didn't want to lose sight of that.
What's kept you going through this?
Honestly, I think as an entrepreneur, it's going to be in you or it's not in you. There's only 2 things you can do. 1, you can just give up, or 2, you deal with it and just keep pressing on.
Coming up, how researchers are working with the Manitoba First Nation to grow veggies designed to combat diabetes. Welcome back. The U.S. Democratic Party's National Convention wraps up in Chicago tonight.
American Vice President Kamala Harris will accept her nomination as the party's candidate for the President of the United States. The CBC's Katie Simpson is on the convention floor with a look ahead to tonight's keynote event.
Everything that's been happening inside this arena over the past week has been building to this moment. Kamala Harris is going to walk out onto that stage and formally accept the Democratic nomination to be the party's presidential nominee. She'll also deliver what will likely be one of the most important speeches of her political career. The vibe, the atmosphere, it's expected to be rock and roll. There's going to be celebrities, there's going to be musical guests. They want to spread a sense of joy and excitement that so many Democrats that you talk to here on the floor and in and around the convention site, that's what they say this 4-day sort of love-in has really been about. Now, Kamala Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, had his first opportunity to introduce himself to Americans last night, trying to keep that vibe going, introducing himself as America's friendly neighbor.
It's the honor of my life to accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States.
The big challenge for Democrats going forward after this convention wraps up is trying to find a way to keep the momentum going. One thing to remember about political conventions, this is a space filled with people that are very much like-minded. They're very excited and enthusiastic. But once this is over, trying to take that enthusiasm and turn it into momentum, trying to get out the vote, trying to appeal to voters beyond the Democratic base, that is going to be a challenge in an election that is expected to be incredibly close. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Chicago.
An Israeli delegation is now in Cairo to resume talks aimed at a ceasefire in Gaza and getting a hostage exchange deal with Hamas. Just this week, 6 Israeli hostages were found dead in Gaza. Sasha Petrovic attended a funeral for one of them.
The funeral was at the Nir Oz kibbutz, which is right on the border with Gaza. When you're standing there, you can see the smoke rising on the horizon. You can hear the airstrikes that are being carried out just a few kilometers away in some cases. You can also feel the grief on this kibbutz because they really suffered on October the 7th. They had some 46 people who were killed that day. They were one of the first places that was attacked by Hamas militants, and some 71 people from the kibbutz were kidnapped and taken over the border into Gaza. Many of these people have not been seen since. Abraham Munter was one of them. 79 years old, had lived in the kibbutz most of his life, was taken away that day. He was among 6 Israeli hostages in Gaza found dead. People there didn't really know that he had lost his life, but he was buried yesterday. There's been a lot of grief on the kibbutz. There's also a sense of betrayal because people there feel that there's been so many opportunities for the Israeli government to come up with some sort of a ceasefire deal, a new one, a more permanent one, but at least one that would bring the hostages home and perhaps bring those who have been killed, that bring their bodies back, which is very important.
We know for sure that there were opportunities to sign a deal and release the hostages. Did not happen, did not occur, and this is very tragic. It does not deserve this kind of end.
Unfortunately, that deal still seems to be elusive. Talks have been going on for months now. There's been heightened activity over the past 2 weeks as mediators from Qatar and Egypt and the United States step in. And there was a phone call between U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, where the Americans tried to put more pressure on Israel to find a way to cooperate with Hamas, at least over the return of the hostages and over an end to hostilities long enough for that to happen, perhaps even longer. At the moment, nothing has really changed, though there's a lot of hope, a lot of frustration, and unfortunately, a lot of grief on both sides of the border. Sasha Petrovic, CBC News, Jerusalem.
As we mentioned off the top of the program, the federal government has ordered the country's 2 major freight railways to enter binding arbitration. CN Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City had locked out more than 9,000 workers at midnight after negotiations broke off at midnight with the Teamsters Union. The Minister of Labour says the shutdown cannot be allowed to drag on. The CBC's Evan Dyer takes us through the day.
As trains across Canada stopped rolling, pickets went up this morning at CPKC headquarters in Calgary and at CN Rail in Montreal, where they were joined by the NDP's Jagmeet Singh.
CP Rail and CN Rail have locked them out. It is their fault that this is going on.
Singh, whose party props up the Liberals' minority government, warned his party would oppose intervention.
We're not going to accept any interference, whether that's forcing arbitration, whether that's forcing back to work. None of that is allowed on our watch.
But there was anger from those who saw their livelihoods threatened by the looming strike.
The government has a responsibility to protect Canadians, to protect the supply chain, to protect workers impacted by the work stoppage, and also to protect small businesses in Canada.
Some farmers were already losing money as rail companies stopped accepting cargo.
It will impact grain farmer sales by $50 million a day, just simply because they won't be able to deliver their grain to their local grain elevators that rely on railway transportation.
By the afternoon, the government had grown tired of waiting.
I've directed the Canada Industrial Relations Board to assist the parties in settling the outstanding terms of their collective agreements by imposing final binding arbitration.
The dispute will now be settled by the Canada Industrial Relations Board, and both companies and the union will have to accept whatever settlement it imposes. Meanwhile, they must restore service.
I have also directed the board to extend the term of the current collective agreements until new agreements have been signed, and for operations on both railways to resume forthwith.
McKinnon says the trains should be rolling again within a couple of days. The government's back-to-work order will strain its relationship with the New Democrats, whose backing it depends on to remain in power. The NDP has yet to respond, but clearly the government felt the threat of a far-reaching rail strike and all the economic damage that would entail was more of a risk than losing the support of the New Democrats. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
There could be more trouble on the transportation front. Air Canada pilots have voted to authorize a strike. About 98% of the members who cast a ballot have approved a walkout, if necessary, to win a new contract with Air Canada. The 5,000 members of the Airline Pilots Association have been pushing for greater wage parity with their American counterparts. Air Canada pilots could be in a legal strike position as early as September 17th.
Italian officials say UK tech billionaire Mike Lynch is among the 6 people now confirmed to have died when a super yacht sank off the coast of Sicily earlier this week. Lynch's body was recovered yesterday and his identity was released today. His 18-year-old daughter Hannah is still listed as missing. It's not known if her body is in the wreckage or if she was thrown into the sea when the vessel went down. Lynch's wife was rescued along with 14 other people. 4 other bodies were found yesterday, and the body of the boat's chef, who grew up in Calgary, was recovered just hours after the yacht sank on Monday.
Heavy monsoon rains and floods have stranded millions in Bangladesh and northeastern India. Officials in Bangladesh say nearly 3 million people are marooned. Torrents of floodwater have inundated roads and submerged large areas. People in some communities have been using ropes to get to safety. In India, at least 7 people drowned or got washed away in floodwaters. 4 others were buried by mudslides. Hundreds of relief camps have been set up for those displaced from their homes. A red alert is in place for the Indian city of Tripura, with schools in the state capital closed for 2 days. A war in Sudan has led to the world's largest hunger crisis, and now there's a new cholera epidemic. Sudan has recorded almost 600 cholera infections and 28 deaths since late July. The war is straining the country's health sector, with heavy rains and flooding compounding the situation. International organizations are helping the Sudanese spray chlorine and open treatment centers. The health minister says last year there were 12,000 cholera cases and more than 350 deaths. Obesity and diabetes are common problems in First Nations in Canada, and diet is a key contributor. Now, the University of Manitoba is teaming up with one northern community in a smart farm project to grow healthier food. Karen Pauls has that story.
So these are broccoli sprouts. These are actually
this sci-fi looking lab is what's known as a vertical smart farm.
We grow up to day 10, harvest, and then package, ship down to Winnipeg.
And there's no soil?
No.
Full spectrum LED lights mimic sunshine.
Just gonna water these guys, give them
Artificial intelligence controls temperature, moisture, carbon dioxide, and nutrient levels.
So they're looking at different wavelengths and different times of growth to see when is the best time to harvest them so that they will be the most nutritious.
Yes, that's correct.
Researchers have found stimulating production of specific compounds in vegetables, like potassium and manganese, makes these veggies more nutritious than grocery store produce.
Typically 2 times to 11 times higher, right? Especially the manganese was very high. Then they can consume much less, but they still same benefits.
Almost half of the adult population in this remote northern community is suffering from type 2 diabetes. Leaders say there's an average of 3 diabetes-related deaths every month. And part of the challenge is encouraging people to cook and eat these smart vegetables.
I'll be honest, the first 4 months of working here, I didn't really eat the product because I was scared of it. There's a lot of stigma that we were met with. People were like, oh, it's artificial, it's fake food.
So, food scientists developed recipes, cooked them, and brought a meal to the local shopping mall.
Would you like to try some chili with kale? You don't notice it that much. And then we just have some sage and kale cornbread muffins.
Tastes more healthy, more natural. Yeah, that's what I think.
Have you ever eaten kale before?
I don't even know what that is.
Kale, first time trying that, and with everything else, it's great.
Do you think you might cook with this more often?
Yes, for sure.
The goal is to educate people on how smart veggies contribute to a healthy diet and ultimately save lives. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Opaskwayak Cree Nation, Manitoba.
One of the young survivors of the Humboldt Broncos bus crash is looking to make waves at the Paris Paralympic Games. Jacob Wasserman was left paralyzed from the waist down, but never lost his competitive drive. Now he's representing Canada in para rowing. Wasserman and his coach spoke to the media during a training session in Regina.
You got to be a little bit crazy, I think, to be a rower, to enjoy some of the pain that comes with it and that comes with the training and with the racing. But it's a bit of a thrill too, to be out there and on the water and doing things that I wasn't doing before I was injured. I think the big thing of all those guys, all the survivors, is we were part of that team, but everybody's so much more than just a Humboldt Bronco. I mean, that's going to be a part of us forever, and we're all very proud to be that, but we all are so much more, and they're all a group of amazing guys. They were before the crash, and now it's just everybody gets to see it. I'm not surprised that any of those guys are going on to amazing things. It's a grind out there, but that's part of the sport, and that's what any rower will tell you. That's a big part of it, and you got to kind of learn to enjoy it. Saskatoon Rowing Club was having a have a go day, come try it for rowing, and I thought that'd be probably a really good workout, so I went to give it a try. It was the hardest workout I'd ever done, pre-injury or post, and yeah, I just sort of stuck with it, and my times were looking competitive, what my coaches were saying, and it just, like I said, happened into it, and it worked out really well. So in March, we went out to Rio just to get more experience. Like around Canada, there's not a lot of PR1 athletes, so went out there to get some racing experience. It was a Paralympic qualifier. We knew that, but there wasn't an expectation going in. I was just going out there to get some practice racing against other athletes in my same classification, and we, like I said, kind of got lucky. Things fell into place, and I ended up getting a silver out there and qualifying for Paris, and then things went kind of into overdrive, preparing, like we said, 5 years earlier than what we were ready for.
What's exciting to me, and I said this to him the other day, is he's demonstrated a capacity to achieve the speeds that we need to achieve ultimately. Now into Paris and beyond, it's about doing the work necessary to sustain those speeds. But it's exciting that he's actually shown the capacity to go as fast as we're going to need him to go.
Looking at past of what I've done in the last 2 years, like I am proud of how far I've come, but I gotta put up times and put up numbers that I'm proud of, and compared to what I've done before going in. So it's going to be a big learning experience to just move forward. I want to show up and perform, or give a performance that I'm proud of.
Well, speaking personally, I think this is a pretty good summer for weather.
It's been great.
Today's another one of those days.
And you know, I know we're getting some showers. The lawns could use it. I know mine's a little dry, so it's pretty good balance.
I think so. And the humidity going down, that's always a good balance when it goes down and it's comfortable. And tonight we do have some showers showing up on the radar, but it's not for Nova Scotia. We do have some scattered showers that are now forming across New Brunswick, even some thunderstorms, although in the last hour or so there have been a few scattered showers starting to pop up through the Annapolis Valley, but everywhere else is quiet. And I think this is going to be a theme. There's going to be areas where we're going to see rain over the next couple of days, but others, in fact most, are going to be on the dry side. Temperature-wise, our temperatures have held in the lower 20s to upper teens, but watch what happens tomorrow. I think we'll start off with some fog patches, but a mix of sun and clouds can be expected for the beginning of the day. And then in the afternoon, the clouds will be back and on the increase, and there are chances for showers. We'll clear up as we go through the day on Saturday, with the exception of Cape Breton, Inverness, and Victoria County, where those winds blow onshore. We will see some scattered showers forming there. But otherwise, Otherwise, it should be a fairly quiet weekend until the end of the weekend once again, when another disturbance comes our way. It looks like Sunday night into Monday. Good timing on that one.
It is very good.
Where there could be some showers, and then a little bit unsettled next week, but temperatures warming out.
Yeah, pretty good all around. Thanks, Tina. Well, a couple of paddleboarders picked up an unusual hitchhiker when they were out on the water off Vancouver Island earlier this month. Have a look. A sea otter decided to climb aboard and take a ride. One of the paddlers said she thought the animal might be trying to escape a predator, but it wasn't showing any signs of distress or injury.
Now, they kept as much distance as they could from the otter and steered the paddleboard back to shore, giving the animal space to get back in the water. Fisheries and Oceans Canada says this encounter is rare, even though sea otters do occasionally inhabit and swim through that part of Vancouver Island. He's awfully cute.
Just hitching a ride. That's it for us tonight. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Bye.